The rain was coming down hard, turning the streets into shattered mirrors broken by the flashing red and blue lights of the patrol car. I was leaning against the vehicle, the radio crackling in the stillness of the night, when the voice came through. Low, distorted, almost a whisper. "You're the target. Tonight." My heart kicked into overdrive. This wasn't some generic threat. It wasn't about the case I was working. It was personal. And the way he said it, it felt like he knew exactly where I was, what I was wearing, even the cold coffee in my hand. I scanned the area, shuttered windows, dark alleys, shadows that seemed to breathe. My fingers gripped the mic, but my hand was trembling. In that moment, I realized someone inside my own department wanted me dead. I didn't know who, I didn't know why, but I knew that tonight, every step I took could be my last. And worse, the man who'd kill me might already have the key to my front door. I was born in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, where the fire station siren was the clock and the church the meeting point. My father was a mechanic, his hands always smelling of oil, patience running short. My mother, a night shift nurse, with a calm voice that could steady a racing heart in just 2 words. I grew up learning that things break and things heal, and in between you choose who you want to be. I chose the badge when at 12, I saw a police officer pull over in the rain to change a stranded woman's tire. Simple as that. Not out of some cinematic heroism, but out of a silent sense of duty. Years later, the same rain still finds me, and I still believe doing the right thing doesn't need an audience. I came to New York at 23, new uniform, shoes giving me blisters, and a pride I kept hidden like cash at the back of my wallet. Those first months, the city chewed me up. Violence pulsing behind closed doors, the constant wail of ambulances like a second heartbeat, exhaustion that didn't care what day it was. I learned quickly the difference between law and justice, and how, on the streets, the two don't always walk hand in hand. I had a way of seeing things in layers: scene, motive, lie, truth, and a habit that irritated some colleagues. I never let details slide. The dirty shoe on a doorstep, the cup turned upside down, the email sent 2 minutes before the phone call. For some, nitpicking. For me, a map. I married too soon and worked too late. The badge split my home in 2, and when silence finally settled, it weighed like evidence. I lost more than the ring. I lost the possibility of coming home to someone waiting with cold dinner and the question, did everything go okay? The coffee maker stayed, the couch stayed, and the cadence of my own voice filled the apartment. Maybe that's why I got too close to my cases, projecting myself onto victims whose names no one would remember a month later. The kind of thing a therapist calls transference. I call it trying to sleep. My values are both simple and complicated. I don't take shortcuts when the road's right there. I don't bargain with the man in the mirror. And if I have to choose, I'll take the truth that hurts over the comfort that rots. Those rules have cost me promotions, barbecue invitations, and the friendship of people who like to close reports with duct tape. They've also earned me silent enemies, the worst kind. People who smile in the hallway, ask about your family, and hope you slip up. I recognize that look. Because for a while, I learned to hide mine too. The look of a man carrying a secret too heavy for elevator talk. A year ago, after a report I filed didn't sit well upstairs, I learned honesty comes with a fixed price. I found discrepancies in supplier contracts. Over time, that never happened. Patrol cars fueled without leaving the garage. Nothing bloody, but everything corrosive. I sent the dossier to internal audit, and it vanished. Days later, my schedule was changed without notice. I was pulled from a sensitive case, and as a bonus, I found an anonymous note on my desk. Be careful not to trip over your own tongue. I laughed, but it was short, the kind that bounces off your teeth and comes back. My biggest conflict is thinking you can still clean a room just by turning on the lights. That transparency fixes everything. But light also blinds, and some people prefer the shadows because there they don't have to see their own outlines. I still flip the switch, but I've learned to blink. I'm not naive. I know the department is made of regular people dressed in myth, and myths don't hold up to scrutiny for long. Still, every day I put on the uniform and holster my gun like I'm tying a promise to that 12-year-old kid on the side of the road. Maybe I'm stubborn. Maybe I just don't know how to live any other way. When that anonymous voice came over the radio, what I felt wasn't just fear. It was recognition. Like a ghost I'd been pretending not to see, put a hand on my shoulder. The warning didn't come from a stranger in the night. It sounded like someone who knew my routine, my shortcuts, my vices, my black coffee at 2 a.m. Someone inside. And that's where the real wound is. Protecting the city while dodging bullets that might have been bought with my own signature. I always thought the worst enemy was the one we chased into dark alleys. Now I suspect he's learned to wear a tie, say good morning in the same hallway, and sign right below me on the same form. And still, the only thing keeping me from walking away is also the thing putting me in the crosshairs. I don't know how to live without the truth, even when it wants me dead. The night was quieter than it should have been for a Wednesday in New York. Not the normal quiet the city sometimes offers as a reprieve. This was the kind of silence that comes before a storm, when even engines seem to slow and footsteps on the sidewalks get faster. I was on patrol, covering a shift that wasn't mine after an informal request from the sergeant. I didn't question it. I just swallowed it down like a bitter sip you don't want to taste. The radio had already coughed out its share of calls that night. Bar fight, suspected shoplifting, false bomb threat. Things you solve with presence and a firm voice. I was parked on 9th Avenue inside the cruiser, scribbling notes from an old case, when a different kind of static sliced the air. It didn't come from dispatch. It didn't have the cold, procedural tone of official transmissions. It was a muffled voice, low, with a heavy whispering quality. "Codes are useless tonight, detective, and the game is against you." For a moment, I thought it was interference. Radio frequencies in the city sometimes overlap with cabs, trucks, even pirate channels, but the detail that froze my gut was hearing my name right after. Clear, precise, no hesitation. Not a nickname, not a mispronunciation, my full name, spoken like someone who's been repeating it for years. The breathing on the other end was too close, like the transmitter was pressed against the speaker's mouth. "You won't see the first shot coming." I instinctively checked the rearview mirror. Nothing but wet asphalt, street signs glowing under the lamps, and a side street swallowed in shadow. My hand moved toward the transmit button, but I hesitated. If this was someone internal, and all signs pointed that way, anything I said could be traced, recorded, twisted. Instead, I adjusted the volume and stayed still, waiting. The silence that followed was worse. Not 2 minutes later, the official radio crackled. Female voice, operational tone. "Detective, we have an anonymous report of suspicious activity at a warehouse on West 47th, number 615. They specifically requested you to respond." The words hit like a nail into cracked wood. Specifically requested you. Who in their right mind calls in a potential crime and asks for a specific officer by name? That's not protocol. It never is, I asked, where the tip came from. "Public payphone, no ID, male voice, said he only trusts you." That's when it hit me. The trap wasn't just set, I was already standing in it. But ignoring the call would raise more suspicion than following it. I answered with a flat copy and started the engine. The drive to West 47th was a slow-motion reel, traffic lights changing colors, tall buildings leaning over the street like silent witnesses, the wipers sweeping away rain that seemed determined to blur my view. My right hand gripped the wheel tight, my left never strayed from the holster, not out of paranoia, out of instinct. As I got closer, the feeling of being followed grew. Headlights behind me had kept the same distance for 4 blocks. I made a sharp turn to test them, and they vanished as if they'd never been there. That wasn't coincidence. Someone wanted me to remember that even when I thought I was in control, the game was already rigged. Turning onto 47th, I saw the warehouse. Low building, brick walls blackened by pollution and time, windows boarded with uneven planks. The rusted metal sign above the door swayed in the wind, groaning like an old hinge. The streetlight out front was dead, leaving a stretch of sidewalk in complete shadow. And from where I stood, I could swear I smelled something metallic that wasn't rust. I parked half a block away, killed the headlights, and watched. No movement, but the lack of it was enough to keep me on edge. The radio hissed again. Not dispatch. The same voice as before, now lower, almost intimate. You've stepped onto the board, and there's no way back. That's when I understood. The call wasn't about the warehouse. The warehouse was just the stage. The real target was me, and someone who knew me inside out, was about to make their move. The street in front of the warehouse felt swallowed by more than just night. It was wrapped in something thicker, heavier. The rain had eased, but the air still carried that mix of wet asphalt, rust, and old oil, like the place itself was exhaling a silent warning for me not to cross the invisible line. I parked the cruiser a few meters from the entrance, leaving the engine running. I'd learned early on that in scenes like this, a quick exit could be the only thing between you and an obituary. The building was a survivor from another era, weathered red brick, windows blocked by hastily nailed wooden boards, some still clinging to flakes of old white paint. A heavy chain kept the side gate shut, but the padlock, big, shiny, almost new, stood out. That detail punched a hole in my gut. Places that are truly abandoned don't get selective maintenance. I stepped out slowly, each boot step clicking softly against the damp ground. The street was deserted, but in the corners of my vision, shadows seemed to shift, not moving away, but breathing. Above me, a lone street lamp flickered, its electric hum nearly drowning out the distant rumble of a passing train. No curious neighbors at their windows, no TVs casting pale light through curtains. It felt like everyone had already decided to hide from what was about to happen here. As I got closer to the main door, I spotted marks on the ground, fresh tire tracks, 2 sets of men's footprints coming and going, and what looked like a drag trail, as if something heavy had been hauled inside. The wooden door was swollen from moisture, but the lock showed no signs of forced entry. That meant one of 2 things. Whoever went in had a key, or the door was left unlocked, waiting for me. I took a deep breath and pressed the shoulder mic. Central, Detective Miller here. I'm at 615 West 47th. No visible movement, but clear signs of recent activity. Requesting backup. The reply came 2 beats later, just long enough to make me uneasy. Negative, Detective. All units are occupied. Proceed with caution. All units occupied? At 2 a.m. on a rainy Wednesday? I knew that tone. Too procedural, to be honest. I froze for a moment, listening to my own heartbeat. Too loud for a silent street. Then I caught a detail, a faint glint coming from a crack in the second-floor boards, like a lens was pointed right at me. It wasn't broken glass catching light. It was steady, controlled. I was being watched. The wind shifted, carrying a stronger metallic tang mixed with something else I didn't want to identify. A heavy, sweet note I'd only smelled in places where life had been violently cut short. I stepped closer to the door, running my fingers over the cold, damp wood. Something was carved into it, barely visible in the gloom, a deep scratch forming the letter M. It didn't take me more than a second to understand. It wasn't random. It was the first letter of my last name, marked to make sure I knew this wasn't a mistake. That I wasn't just a cop answering a call. I was the reason for the call. My hand went instinctively to my holster. Every step felt measured, like the concrete under me might give way. Beside the door, a rusted plaque still tried to read Bayfield Storage Co., but the letters were too corroded to tell the rest of the story. The only other sound was the distant drip of water inside. And drips don't echo like that in empty warehouses. Not unless there's something for them to fall onto. I glanced one last time over my shoulder. The world outside seemed gone. No passing cars, no far-off sirens. Just me, the warehouse, and the sense that, once I crossed that door, I'd be stepping into a place where the city's rules no longer applied. A place drawn up specifically for me. I gripped the handle, ice cold. It turned without resistance, the hinges groaning in a slow, deliberate welcome. And in that instant, I knew. Whatever game was in motion here, I'd been a piece on the board long before I arrived. The groan of the door still echoed as I stepped inside. The air was heavy, damp, carrying the stench of dust, old grease, and that metallic tang that made me swallow hard. The space was wide, but the darkness fractured any sense of dimension. Only a few thin beams of light slipped through cracks in the roof, catching the suspended dust, floating slowly as if oblivious to the tension saturating the place. I moved carefully, boots muffled against the concrete floor. Training screamed at me to stop, to wait for backup, but the lack of any real response from Central and the cold prickling at the back of my neck told me no one was coming. My weapon was already drawn, aimed ahead, finger tight along the trigger guard, every muscle primed to react. To my left, a narrow hallway stretched toward the back, ending at a half-open metal door. A flickering light seeped from inside, blinking like a dying fluorescent. Each flash gave me glimpses, boxes stacked unevenly, dark stains on the floor I didn't want to identify yet, and what looked like a sheet draped over something, or someone. I advanced one slow step at a time. The silence was broken only by the irregular drip of water somewhere deep in the building. Then came a dry, metallic sound, not the dripping. Something was being dragged. I swung the gun toward the noise, eyes slicing through the shadows. Nothing, but the air shifted, the way it does when someone moves fast, just out of sight behind cover. Instinct pulled me toward a side passage. As I went, I noticed something wrong. Every security camera mounted on the walls had been tilted downward, their view blocked. Someone had deliberately blinded. The system. This wasn't an improvised setup. It had been prepared. That's when the radio on my shoulder hissed. The sound almost made me fire. The voice was back, low, slicing into my nerves. "Closer than you think, detective." I froze, scanning. The transmission didn't seem to come from my radio at all, not from a fixed point. It was echoing through the building itself. Then I realized it wasn't from Central. It was coming from hidden speakers somewhere inside. I pushed forward, breathing, heavier now. Passing more crates, I saw some open, revealing black plastic bags wrapped in tape, bundles that had nothing to do with normal storage. One had torn open, and what I saw inside chilled me. Folders, case files from the department, stamped confidential. I recognized some of the names and dates, internal cases, sensitive investigations, and right on top of one file, my own name. A sudden noise made me spin. The metal door at the far end of the hall was now fully open, the flickering, light replaced by a steady glow. I entered, senses stretched thin. Inside, the room was even more claustrophobic. Bare concrete walls, an old ceiling fan barely turning, and in the center, a chair. On it, a bulletproof vest just like mine, with a single bullet hole in the middle. I approached, weapon still up, and noticed a microphone clipped to the chair's backrest. Before I could react, it crackled to life, the voice now almost amused. "You're in the right place, but the wrong time." Suddenly, a crash echoed from the hallway. Something heavy hit the floor, followed by quick footsteps. I ran to the doorway but saw no one, just a shadow slipping toward the side of the building. I didn't think. I gave chase, gun steady, eyes trying to cut through the dark. The sound of footsteps matched mine, always a few paces ahead, as if they were toying with the distance. When I burst outside, the rain had returned in force, stabbing my face with icy needles. The figure was sprinting toward a narrow alley, and I followed, heart pounding. I rounded the corner, and the alley was empty. Just wet brick walls and the hiss of water rushing to the drains. That's when it hit me. The chase wasn't to escape me. It was to pull me away from my cruiser. I turned, and in the distance, I saw it. My driver's side door wide open. Inside, taped to the steering wheel, a brown envelope with my name in block letters. The game had just changed, and it wasn't the first time someone had been one. Step ahead of me tonight. The rain was falling in heavy waves, thick enough to blur the streetlights and turn the world into a dirty watercolor. Every step toward the cruiser felt slower than the last, like some part of me already knew that opening that envelope meant crossing a line I could never come back from. My soaked boots made a dull sound against the asphalt, and the cold wind cut through my shirt like a blade. When I reached the driver's side, I saw it clearly. The envelope was taped to the steering wheel with a strip of black duct tape, perfectly centered, like someone had all the time in the world to set it up. I pulled it free, feeling the damp, almost fragile paper, heavier than it should have been, like it carried more than just documents. My name, Miller, was written in block letters, firm and deliberate, no hesitation. I knew that handwriting before I even opened it. I ripped the seal. Inside were 3 photographs printed on matte paper. The first hit me like a gut punch. It was me, sitting in the cafe around the corner from my building 3 days ago, drinking my usual black coffee. The shot was taken from far away, but it was perfectly focused. The second, worse. Me, unlocking my apartment door late at night, hand in my pocket, completely unaware I was being watched. And the third drained the sound out of the world. It was a photo taken inside my bedroom. I was asleep. The window was closed, the curtains drawn. There was no possible angle to capture that shot without being inside the apartment. The detail that froze me was in the mirror's reflection beside the bed, the silhouette of someone holding the camera. The wind caught the envelope and something slipped out, clattering onto the wet asphalt. A small black flash drive, unmarked. I picked it up and slid into the cruiser, starting the engine. Plugging the device into the onboard system, I waited a few seconds until a video appeared on the screen. The footage shook slightly, clearly from a handheld phone. I recognized the room instantly, the 8th floor conference room at Central Precinct. Around the table, 3 men in uniform. This wasn't an argument, it was planning. In the middle sat a folder with my name on it. One of them, his back to the camera, had graying hair and a familiar way of holding a pen. Captain Harris. The voices were clear. "He's dug too deep," one man said, flipping through papers. "If we keep waiting, he'll expose all of us. Then we don't wait," Harris replied, calm, as if he were talking about changing a tire. "The warning's been given. Tonight, he doesn't go home." I paused the video, feeling my pulse hammering in my temples. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated execution, ordered by a man I shook hands with every morning. The man who'd trained me, who told me to protect my brothers in uniform like myself. I hit play again. The third man, silent until now, spoke. "The scene's ready. He'll answer the call, walk into the warehouse. There won't be any witnesses." The video cut off there, but the silence left behind was heavier than any noise. This wasn't about some irregularities in contracts or missing files. They wanted me gone because I was about to uncover something worth more than any oath to the badge. Rain slammed against the windshield, and in the glass I caught my own reflection. Wide eyes, short breath, jaw locked. It was the face of a man realizing his worst enemies didn't hide in the city's dark alleys. They wore the same uniform, walked the same halls, and signed right beneath his name on official reports. I gripped the flash drive in my hand and looked toward the warehouse, still there, still waiting, like an open mouth ready to swallow the next wrong step. Every instinct told me to leave, disappear, change my name, but something stronger than fear anchored me. I had to know what they were hiding in there and why it was worth my life. The empty envelope blew away into the street. The flash drive stayed with me. And as the sound of the rain merged with the low rumble of the engine, I realized this night was no longer about survival. It was about exposing the truth, even if it cost me everything. When the video ended, I stared at the black screen like it was an unforgiving mirror. Captain Harris, the hand that had gripped my shoulder on my first shift, the voice that taught me to keep my gun low when a suspect was crying, the man who once introduced me as the Division's rising star in my 3rd month. I could swear I still felt the weight of those friendly pats between my shoulder blades, the kind that check if your vest is secure or if the knife has already gone in. Nausea crept in, not from fear, but from the realization that I'd been living alongside a stage play dressed up with applause and commendations. Trust in that building was a luxury, and I'd been paying for it in installments. I thought of my father, the smell of oil on his coveralls, the way he solved the unsolvable with plain words. Bad part? you replace it. I never learned how to replace bad people without breaking the whole machine. I thought of my mother, pulling double shifts, teaching me that calm saves lives. I breathed the way she taught me. 4 counts in, 4 hold, 4 out. My chest cleared, but my head didn't. The question dug in deep. At what point had I become more loyal to the idea of justice than to the flesh and blood people who swore to uphold it with me? And if I crossed this line for good, what would be left of me on the other side? For years I'd clung to an ideal, the badge as an anchor in rough seas. But anchors also sink ships when you don't notice the chains wrapped around your ankle. I knew too well the fate of those who refused to play along with the shadows. Reassignment to nowhere, reputation dismantled, a procedural error that starts as a rumor and ends as a death sentence. I'd seen that movie. I'd watched a fellow officer get chewed up by withins, the inside eating one of its own. Back then, I swallowed hard and kept walking. Tonight, the bill had my name on it. The anger came, hot, clean, offering shortcuts. 1 phone call, 1 hungry reporter, a precise leak of the video, a few names, and I could watch the circus burn from the outside in. But fire burns the one who lights it too. I know the smell of a reputation going up in smoke. On the other side of the spectrum was caution. Gather every piece, build the case, find the partie. Right prosecutor, the right judge, the perfect moment. Caution is beautiful on paper. On the street, it has one fatal flaw. It gives the enemy time. My fear wasn't dying. That's been on my inventory of possibilities for years. The real fear was dying the wrong way, as a footnote in a manipulated internal report, reduced to a case study in some integrity and prevention seminar. I could see it. My photo on a PowerPoint slide, with captions like conduct failures, emotional instability, history of conflicts. The script was already written. They just needed the ending. I looked at my hands. They were trembling, but steady enough to obey. I still had a choice. I could back off, vanish, call an old contact out in the sticks, and reinvent myself in a town where bars close early and no one asks questions. Tempting, but not who I am. If I walked away, it wouldn't just erase my story. It would erase every victim whose case depended on that tiny shred of decency keeping the machine from turning into a guiltless grinder. I wasn't fighting for abstractions. I remembered names, dates, eyes, and that pulled me back into the rain like a hook. The loneliness, though, bit hard. Who could I call? My trust list fit on a Post-it. There were good cops, sure, but few willing to jump into the same pit. And asking for help now meant opening a flank. Every message, every call, another chance for them to aim more precisely. The conclusion was painful and liberating. I was on my own. And maybe that was an advantage. A lone target moves differently, and a man with nothing to lose refuses the scripted scene. I closed my eyes for a second, replayed the video without sound. 3 men, 1 table, my name on a folder. The cold ease with which they decided my fate gave me something sharper than anger: purpose. Surviving the night wasn't enough. I had to choose how to live inside it, and the choice was clear. Walk out of there with something undeniable, something they couldn't rewrite. In their department of narratives, something that by morning would make powerful people look down and see the floor cracking. Another question bit down. How far was I willing to go? What line would I cross? Planting evidence was out. Faking a scene? No way. I had to win playing clean on a board already rigged. Possible? Maybe not. But impossibility never stopped a determined man. It just sets the price. I opened the glove compartment, touched my badge like I was confirming my identity to my own. Ghost. The cold metal sent back one certainty. I wasn't bargaining my name, not with them, not with anyone. The conflict inside me didn't end. It learned to march. Fear alongside courage. Anger leashed by discipline. Caution holding hands with urgency. I wasn't balanced. I was aligned. I looked at the warehouse. The darkness breathing behind that door. The next step was inevitable. Go back in. Find the heart of the maze. Learn why my death was worth this much. And walk out with a tooth from the high monster. If I fell, I'd fall biting. If I won, it wouldn't be pretty. It'd be final. I shifted into gear, killed the lights, and let the rain cover the cruiser until it blended into the street. The clock read 2:27 a.m. Their time. From now on, it would be mine. And when the cold metal of that door handle touched my palm again, I already knew. The line had been crossed. Now, I had to choose exactly where I would break it. The cold from the handle seeped into my skin like it wanted to remind me that from this moment on, every move would carry the weight of a sentence. The warehouse loomed in front of me like an open mouth, and I knew that if I took the next step, I'd either walk out with the truth or not walk out at all. No middle ground. For a few seconds, I just stood there, listening to the rain drumming on the corrugated roof, straining to catch anything beneath it. A footstep, a click, a breath. But the only answer was silence, thick as wet cement. I felt the flash drive in my pocket. That little piece of plastic was both the trigger and my death warrant if it ended up in the wrong hands. I could leave right now, go to the press, drop the bomb. But I wouldn't have the full picture. In the court of public opinion, without every piece, they'd paint me as a traitor, a paranoid, maybe even someone bought by gangs to destabilize the department. They controlled the microphone. I needed the final recording, the proof that couldn't be spun. And that proof I knew was in there. I took 3 deep breaths. Fear was there, but not in the way that paralyzes. It was sharp now, guiding me. Fear said, "Look up, don't touch that. The corridor is too narrow for 2. I held onto it like a leash on a dangerous dog. Courage didn't yell, "Go." It just kept pushing my feet forward, inch by inch. I pressed my shoulder mic but said nothing. I no longer trusted the channel. Instead, I switched to an old, almost forgotten frequency, one few people even knew I kept active. If I went down, at least the last transmission wouldn't pass through Harris and his little council of executioners. I stepped inside. The air was colder, like it was guarded by more than concrete walls. The main hall's lights still stuttered overhead, but I ignored them. My focus was on the details. The irregular sound of drips, a faint draft hinting at an unseen exit, and patches of floor with no dust. Signs someone had been through here recently. I reached the metal door at the back, the one where I'd earlier found the chair with the bullet-pierced vest. But now the room beyond had changed. Boxes that were once piled in the corner had been moved, forming a narrow passage leading to another, smaller door, almost hidden. I didn't remember seeing it before, which meant it was either camouflaged or someone had just revealed it, waiting for me to find it. My fingers brushed the lock, not engaged. Another choice. Go in, knowing this could be exactly where they wanted me, or turn back and lose the trail. I didn't think too long. Hesitation now was the difference between acting and being pulled under. I turned the handle. Beyond was a steep, narrow staircase leading down. The smell of mold and rust was so thick it almost made me cough. I descended slowly, each creaking step a signal to anyone below that I was coming. The short hallway at the bottom ended at a reinforced door, like an old vault, its hinges on the outside. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. No breathing, no hum of electronics. Absolute silence. The final decision clicked into place. Either I opened that door now and faced whatever waited, or I'd spend the rest of my life wondering and knowing they'd still be out there. No more calculations. This was the point of no return. I braced myself, planted my feet, and pushed. The door groaned open, revealing a small room lit by a single dangling bulb. In the center, a steel table. On it, stacks of folders, photos, and recordings. But these weren't just evidence of corruption. They were full dossiers on illegal operations run by officers, with dates, names, and details that should never have existed on paper. And on the tallest stack, a folder with my name, packed with falsified reports, ready to bury me. That's when a voice echoed behind me. No mic, no distortion. "I told you you wouldn't be going home tonight, Miller." The cold that crawled up my spine didn't come from the basement air. It came from knowing that the decision I'd just made had erased every way out except one: fight to the end. And the end was here, breathing the same air I was. My body reacted before my mind could process. I spun around, weapon raised, and saw Captain Harris standing at the basement entrance. He wasn't in uniform, just a dark overcoat soaked from the rain, and in his hands was a pistol with a suppressor already fitted. The smile on his face wasn't satisfaction. It was the expression of a man who knew he'd already won before the game even started. "Lower the gun, Miller," he said, in that calm tone he used to soothe victims in shock. "It doesn't have to end like this." His voice echoed through the basement, and in that instant I realized we were alone. No backup lurking nearby, no squad at his shoulder. This wasn't a quick hit, it was a final conversation, and I had just walked into the wrong confessional. "So, this is it?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Years of speeches about honor, about protecting the city, about keeping the machine running, he cut in. "You think you know how the game works, but you're still a kid with a shiny badge. There's no such thing as a clean city, Miller. There's balance, and you broke the balance. It was all smoke. Every word was calculated to keep me talking, to strip me of my focus. I kept my sights trained on his chest, but the tension between us made it clear the first shot would decide who walked out alive. All the while, my eyes scanned the room, a metal pipe leaning. Against the wall, an open cabinet with heavy boxes inside, and just 2 steps from my left hand, an old audio recorder sitting on a shelf. "Balance isn't executing the people who tell the truth," I shot back. "That's rot." Harris sighed, lowering his gun slightly. It wasn't surrender, it was bait. An invitation for me to step closer and lose the advantage of distance. But before either of us could fire, footsteps pounded down the stairs. Fast, heavy, my heart kicked harder. Someone else was coming. Harris turned his head for just a second, and that was all I needed. I lunged sideways, slamming my shoulder into the shelf and knocking it over. The crash sent boxes clattering across the floor, masking my movement as I dove behind the steel table. The suppressor coughed twice, bullets slamming into the metal inches from my head. The basement door swung open, and a masked figure stepped inside carrying a rifle. Not here for me, at least not first. The way the muzzle swung, it was clear his priority was the man across the room. But the scene shifted in an instant. The masked man froze when he saw Harris. "What are you doing?" the muffled voice demanded. The order wasn't for now. That moment of hesitation told me something. Not everyone in this game was working from the same script. I used it. Rolling across the floor, I grabbed the metal pipe and swung it hard, striking Harris's hand and sending his pistol skidding away. He roared, stepping back but didn't run. He came, at me with his full weight, trying to bring me down. The masked man took 1 step back, uncertain, maybe realizing the board was more complicated than he'd been told. I didn't waste the pause. I snatched the folder with my name from the table and stuffed it under my coat. No matter what happened, I now had physical proof that I was being hunted. The victory lasted seconds. The rifle came up again, this time pointed straight at my chest. Harris, cradling his injured hand, said flatly, "Do it, now." And then, the sound of sirens. Faint at first, but growing fast. The reaction from the 2 men told me everything. Harris stiffened, holding his ground. The masked man, however, backed off instantly, like he wanted no part in being seen here. Without a word, the masked man turned and disappeared up the stairs. Harris threw me one last look, pure, wordless hatred, before retrieving his pistol and following. Seconds later, I was alone in the basement, the sirens closing in, the table still, piled with evidence I couldn't possibly carry out. Those sirens meant one of 2 things. Either someone at Central had finally responded to my earlier call for backup, or Harris had summoned the kind of reinforcements that show up to clean a scene. Either way, I had less than a minute to choose. Stay and try to hold the location, risking being neutralized as a threat, or vanish with what I had, and find another way to bring down their castle. As I climbed the stairs, my pulse pounding in my ears, the echo of my own footsteps seemed to say just one thing: everything is different now. And it wasn't just my life. What I held in my coat had the power to implode the whole department. And at the same time, put an even bigger target on my back. When I reached street level, the rain had turned into a nearly solid curtain, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. The sirens were close now, but still out of sight. I moved along the side of the warehouse, searching for an escape route that would get me clear before whatever reinforcements Harris had called arrived. That's when I heard someone calling my name, not over the radio, not from the shadows, from inside a car parked in a narrow alley, headlights off. "Miller, over here!" The voice was urgent, female, but not hostile. I approached with my weapon half raised, heart still pounding from the basement. The passenger door swung open, and I recognized the face behind the wheel instantly. Detective Claire Ramos, from Financial Crimes. We weren't close, but we'd worked 2 cases together before, and I knew one thing about her. She didn't play to lose, and she never played for the wrong side. "Get in," she insisted. "You've got maybe 2 minutes before they lock this whole area down." I slid in, still unsure how she knew where to find me. As soon as the door shut, she floored the accelerator, maneuvering through the narrow back streets with the skill of someone who'd done this more than once. "How did you find me?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. "I was monitoring a suspicious internal file transfer. I thought it was just another evidence purge, until I saw your name in the operation log." She shot me a quick glance. "You're officially a target now, Miller, and it's not just Harris." Those words hit like lead. I already knew Harris was central to this, but not just him was what worried me. She went on. "I overheard a call between him and 2 other supervisors. They're using an old internal op code, the same one the special unit used 6 years ago to cover up that Port District shooting. Remember?" I remembered. I also remembered that no recordings from that case ever survived. They're calling it integrity maintenance. Integrity? I almost laughed. That's what they call an internal execution now? She didn't smile. Instead, she eased off the gas just long enough to hand me a flash drive identical to the one I had. I pulled this before they wiped the server. Audio, files, payment spreadsheets. Miller, they're selling security contracts to private companies, skimming funds, and using the department itself as a personal enforcement arm. And the worst part, people you think are untouchable are in this up to their necks. I looked at the flash drive, then at her. "Why are you helping me?" She took a deep breath before answering. "Because I know if they take you down, my name's next on the list. And because," she paused, weighing the words, "someone has to prove there's still a right side." The rain streaked across the windshield as we drove, but that conversation had already shifted the course of the night. I wasn't completely alone anymore. Claire wasn't just a witness. She knew the game, and she knew the rules being broken. She had something I didn't. Access. "What's your plan now?" she asked. "Find a way to put this out there so they can't erase it. Or us." I said us on purpose, so she'd know that from here on out, there was no walking away without being part of it. She nodded without hesitation. "Then we need somewhere safe to work. We can't use the precinct or either of our homes." As we weighed our options, an anonymous text came through on her phone. Just one sentence. "You have until sunrise." No sender, but the meaning was clear. Harris and his crew knew there were now 2 names on their list. The silence that followed wasn't fear, it was decision. I looked at Claire and saw she was just as committed as I was. For the first time since that first voice on the radio, I felt something other than survival instinct. I felt the possibility, slim, dangerous, but real, that we might actually turn the game around. That conversation didn't just give me a plan. It gave me something I hadn't had all night, the sense that maybe, just maybe, I had a way to survive and win. The engine hummed low as Claire steered us through streets that didn't even register on the GPS. The rain had eased, but inside me it was still pouring. Every drop was a fragment of what I used to believe about wearing the badge. And the truth was, until tonight, I still clung to the illusion that the rot was the exception. A stray mistake here, a bad apple there, people too weak to carry the weight of the uniform. Now, with 2 flash drives in my pocket and Harris's voice burned into my memory like a scar, I understood that we were the exception. I glanced at Claire, and wondered how many like her were left in the department. Maybe half a dozen, maybe none. Most had already learned to look the other way, not out of malice, but survival. And I knew that was the more tempting path. Close your eyes and keep going, because opening them costs too much. But something in me had shifted. It wasn't just outrage. It was the realization that if I wanted to keep being a cop, I couldn't just be part of the machine. I'd have to be the flaw in it, the crack that lets the light in, even if they try to fill it with concrete afterward. For years, I thought courage was stepping toward the guy with the gun in the street, pushing through a door into a hostage situation without knowing what was on the other side. But now I saw that the hardest courage is standing your ground when the threat wears the same uniform as you and knows exactly where you live, where you have your morning coffee, and how you sleep. Harris's words still echoed. Keep the machine running. That's what he believed in. And for a long time, I thought the machine was worth protecting. But machines have no conscience, no morality. People do. And when the machine starts grinding up its own parts, someone has to be willing to pull the plug. The bitter truth hit me hard. I couldn't see myself only as the victim of tonight. If I made it through this, I'd have to take on something bigger. Not for glory, not for redemption, but because if I didn't, no one would. That meant changing how I moved, how I planned, how I breathed. Fear, which I'd always treated as an enemy, had become my ally. It kept me alert, reminded me that every step could be a trap. I no longer saw the city streets as a patrol route. They were a chessboard where pieces moved in the dark, and survival depended more on anticipating the next move than reacting to the last. Claire broke the silence. You know that if you take this all the way, there's no going back, right? I looked at her and answered without hesitation. There hasn't been any going back since the moment. That voice said my name on the radio, and it was true. That first anonymous transmission wasn't just a death threat. It was the trigger that shattered my old self. The man who first stepped into that warehouse no longer existed. In his place was someone who understood that justice isn't just about catching criminals. It's about making sure justice itself can't be hijacked by the very people sworn to uphold it. The transformation wasn't heroic. I didn't feel stronger or braver. If anything, I felt the real weight of what was ahead. But I had clarity, and in a game of shadows, clarity is as lethal as any gun. As we headed toward what Claire called a safe place, I realized the next step wasn't just surviving the night. It was deciding exactly how to use every scrap of proof we had. If we moved too early, they'd erase it all and disappear. If we waited too long, they'd find us. It was a razor's edge, and I knew that from now on, every choice would be a game of Russian roulette, with 5 rounds in the cylinder. The miller from a few hours ago would have called for backup, followed protocol, trusted the system to handle the rest. The miller now knew that in the wrong hands, the law is just a stamped weapon, and I was ready to use the rules against those who'd twisted them. I understood then. The transformation wasn't about becoming a hero. It was about accepting that to survive and expose the truth, I'd have to play dirty, without ever letting the dirt inside me. And that would be the hardest line to hold. The safe place Claire mentioned wasn't some makeshift hideout or borrowed apartment. It was an old mechanic's shop in Brooklyn, tucked away at the end of a street so forgotten even delivery drivers avoided it. The outer gate was rusted over, but inside there was light, power, and a small office sealed off with reinforced walls. She explained it had belonged to an uncle who'd served in the Navy and later worked in port security, a man naturally distrustful, who had turned the place into a discreet bunker. Once we were inside, we locked everything down and got to work. We spread the files I'd managed to get out of the basement across the table, along with the flash drive I'd carried and the one she had recovered. The information was a clear map of the rot. Forged contracts, bank transfers to offshore accounts, doctored operational orders, and, the worst of it, records of internal executions disguised as resisting arrest. Harris's name was on several of these orders, but he wasn't alone. 2 other supervisors showed up repeatedly, alongside the signature of a prosecutor and even a city councilman. It was clear now, this wasn't just police corruption. It was a network, where law enforcement, politics, and private interests were intertwined. Harris wasn't protecting the machine. He was a key part of it. A plan began to take shape. Claire suggested we couldn't trust the press alone, since too many outlets had ties to the group or feared retaliation. The strategy would be twofold. Deliver part of the evidence to an independent federal agency with the reach to launch a full-scale investigation, and keep another portion as a life insurance policy. Risky, but better than putting everything in one basket. While we debated, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I put it on speaker. Harris's voice cut through, cold as a knife. "You think you won something tonight, Miller? This is bigger than you, bigger than us. You still have time to disappear and save your life. But if you keep going, you'll fall with everyone else." I didn't answer. I let the silence sit heavy, then hung up. Claire looked at me with a mix of worry and approval. We worked until nearly 4 in the morning. We cataloged every document, cloned the flash drives onto 3 separate hard drives, and stored them in different locations. One with me, one with Claire, and one she had sent, through a trusted contact, out of state. The idea was simple. If, one of us went down, the other could keep going. Just before dawn, we left the shop and went our separate ways. She would take the physical evidence to a federal agent in Boston, someone who owed her a favor and had a clean record. I'd stay in New York, keeping watch, tracking Harris's moves and the others on the list. By the time I parked the cruiser on a hill overlooking the city, the sky was lightening, the streets beginning to fill, and the night's tension still clinging to me like smoke. The city looked unchanged, but nothing was the same. From that day on, I wasn't just doing my job. I was fighting a silent war against an enemy who knew my every move. The end of that night wasn't a victory or a loss. It was just the end of the first round. Harris was still out there, and so was the entire network behind him. But now I had something they couldn't erase: documented truth. And more importantly, I had an ally who believed in it as much as I did. As the sun broke weakly over the skyline, I felt the weight of the night pressing on my shoulders, but also a strange clarity. The operation didn't end here. In fact, it had only just begun. And if they wanted to take me down, they'd have to face the fact that I was no longer the cop who'd walked into that warehouse thinking I was just answering a call. I was the man who had seen the rotten heart of the machine, and who wouldn't stop until he tore it out. Some nights never really end, even when the sun is high. This was one of them. I spent the day pretending everything was normal. I showed up at the precinct, greeted colleagues, even exchanged a few words with Harris as if nothing had happened. He did the same, wearing that practiced look of a man who could hide a loaded gun behind a smile. Every sentence between us was a chess move, him measuring me measuring him. To anyone watching from the outside, we were just 2 seasoned cops talking procedures. But beneath the surface, a silent war was underway, and anyone who breathed wrong would be the first to fall. That night, lying in my apartment, I thought about the thin line between justice and survival. The badge feels different once you realize it doesn't just protect the innocent, it protects the right kind of guilty too. For years, I believed corruption was a tumor that grew in isolated spots, ready to be cut out. Now I knew that, more often than not, the tumor is the organ, and to remove it, you have to mutilate the very system you swore to serve. The hardest lesson was understanding that the right side isn't always the official one. We grow up hearing that truth is a light everyone wants to reach. That's a lie. Truth blinds. It burns. It disorients. And there are those who choose to live in the shadows precisely because they don't want to see what it reveals. Harris and the ones with him aren't afraid of the law. They're afraid of the light. Because in the light, they stop being untouchable. I also learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is deciding to act while fear sits like a constant weight in your gut, reminding you that you could lose everything. Fear and courage have walked with me side by side since the moment that voice first spoke my name over the radio, and they still do. The difference is, now I know how to use both as weapons. Claire called the next evening. The material had made it to Boston. Her contact confirmed that part of the evidence was already in safe hands, beyond the reach of any cleanup. That gave me a little breathing room, but also certainty. The countdown had started. They would move against us. Fast. While she spoke, I thought about how many cops, agents, prosecutors, even politicians had stood at the same crossroads and chosen silence. I don't judge them. I know the price of raising your head in a game like this. But I also know that if no one speaks, nothing changes. Maybe I won't bring down the entire network. Maybe I won't even save my badge. But if I can expose a part of it, show that the machine can bleed, it'll have been worth it. Outside, the city carried on as always. Sirens, horns, rushed footsteps, the same routine that hides the invisible wars happening just a few feet away from anyone. And that's when I understood my real job. It's not just to arrest the ones who break the law, it's to protect people from what the law itself can become in the wrong hands. That night changed me. It stripped away my naivety, but gave me something more valuable: purpose. Not the romantic kind from the movies, but the kind born from direct contact with danger and decay. A purpose without medals, without applause, but one that keeps me alive, and in some way free. I know they'll try again. I know they might succeed. But until then, every move I make will be aimed at dismantling what they've built. And when my time comes, I want them to know I didn't go quietly, that every step I took was a message. You don't control everything, for anyone. Hearing this, cop, civilian, enemy, here's the truth. It's not the badge, the uniform, or the gun that makes a police officer. It's the daily choice to protect what's right, even if it means standing against the people in your own graduation photo. That's the only loyalty that matters. And if you ever hear a voice on the radio saying you're the target, remember this: it might be your death sentence, or it might be your call to finally do what needs to be done. Subscribe to the channel now if you want to hear more emotional real-life stories from police officers, and drop a comment below. Which part of this story hit you the hardest? It could be a memory, a dilemma, a single line, anything. I read every single comment, and I promise you, it's in your voices that this mission continues. I'll see you in the next episode.